been responsible for the situation we are in. And the major one has to do with the contradiction of the ethos that used to guide our society. The ethos that used to guide this society until about the late 70s had to do with the collective interests overriding individual interests. And when you have that ethos, that's like a principle, like a philosophy, like an ideology of how you relate to one another, whether government to people, people to people, obas and emirs to chiefs, teachers to lecturers. The interest of the collective must always override that of the individual. And that used to be the ethos that guided our relationship. But it was eroded gradually by the colonial and Western economic system. And it says they're having agricultural farms. They are never productive. But when individuals have their own private farm, so that is to show you that this ethos of individual interest dominating collective interest is what has perverted situation. And when you now talk, and when you have that kind of situation, people cannot legitimately, using legitimate income, acquire, accumulate, and accumulate, and accumulate. So you have to use illegal, illegitimate means. That explains the behavior of your public servants. Yes. That explains the behavior of those in the private sector, whereby, for example, a bank is about to become bankrupt, but the executive directors and the chairman are getting bonuses in millions, if not billions.
So it's not just government.
It's
all
not
fabrics of the society.
Yes, officers
as you said,
society.
Contradictions of the ethos that guide our
yes.
life as a nation.
That has affected, for example, even the interpretation of democracy, the so-called rule of law, the separation, the way people interpret them. They are good principles. They were reasons why they were historically put there by the British that colonized us. And we are supposed to also appreciate those principles. But what has happened is that this ethos I talked about had permeated
and ascertaining interests. And because these interests are contesting and conflicting amongst themselves, there has to be checks and balances. And representing these interests, political parties in a democracy that we are trying to practice are the collation of the variety of interests, and they are enthroned to govern through the processes of credible election. So underlying the morality involved in government, in good governance, there must be the application of the law, the constitutional law, the procedural law, the human laws that underline our beliefs. It may be religious or customary. And I believe that we have to protect ourselves and guide ourselves through checks and balances, not just the branches of government, but also its agencies, as well as private organizations. If private organizations and governments fail because there are no checks, credible checks, and balances, then people go wild with their personal interests, and they abuse the law. They abuse the opportunity. They cease to have the...
As you said, is a right step in the right direction. Do you see it that way?
I'm saying this not just because I'm a member of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, but as a social scientist, as somebody who has studied this since about 1980, that in fact I delivered a pre-inaugural lecture for now last December, in which I did a summary of the fight against corruption in Nigeria, the journey to date. And when you do a status report, you will see that the fight against corruption has been up and down, and that it has not been sincere, particularly in the last administration. But that with this administration, there is one of the major missing elements in the fight, which is political will and determination, leadership by example, are coming. And to that extent, it is in that direction because we have the effect of the reputation of General Buhari, his pronouncements, certain policy measures like the TSA, the energization of the anti-corruption agencies like EFCC, ICPC, even the police now. Then, of course, we have our committee, which is like an intellectual think tank of the matter. We issue advisories. We do engagement with anti-corruption agencies and other agencies prone to corruption to try to change their orientation, their perception, and achieve a kind of paradigm shift in the way they think about corruption. And we develop tools to help prosecutors, to help enforcement, to help judges appreciate the situation. And in other words, to try to institutionalize, as it were, these things. And if anybody say we are not in the right direction and that we are not, that the administration is not making headway, let me give you one. There are many indices all over the, but let me give you one index. A lot of our elites, they are agents of the devil. They worship money. That means they worship mammon. How come now they are now depositing those monies in all kinds of places and then denying the ownership? That shows you there is war going on.
But some they say is a gift.
Now, but Yoruba people have a proverb: who doesn't know how to take meat, put it in the mouth and say, I didn't know where it went. So that is not the issue. But again, before we go, I must agree that there are constraints that is affecting the work of the administration against corruption. For example, I mentioned earlier on the abuse of democracy, the abuse of the rule of law. General talked about law and checks and balances. I smiled. We are from different backgrounds. This family is a law. I'm a social scientist, a criminologist. In fact, one of the hoax, deception of the legal system we have inherited is the attribution of arbitrary equality to people who are substantially, economically, socially unequal. You see, the law says we are equal before the law. That's arbitrary attribution of equality. But in reality, economically, socially, politically, we are unequal. And so when you apply the law, that is what you are having in the matter of corruption. That they are not able to deal with them as they deal with ordinary burglars, thieves, robbers, murderers. Because the socioeconomic class of those who are prone to perpetrate corruption are similar to those who are to enforce and administer it.
Yes.
And a revolutionary approach to fight against corruption must appreciate this limitation of the legalistic approach to the fight against corruption.
So
I'm sorry to say, the fundamental issue is that everybody is treated equal for the search of opportunity of what exists. And the primary thing I think that we are fighting against was captured in His Royal Majesty, His Eminence's speech. And he said, we have programs, we have budgets, we have leaders on how to curb poverty, the growing effects of poverty. In fact, poverty is underlying all the objectives that is leading us to the search for an equitable or equal society in context. Because creation is unequal to start with.
Yes.
Races are unequal with different attributes.
Yes.
So the equalness has a fundamental, basic objective to bring about some equity.
Yes.
Equity gives you equal opportunity to vie for opportunity. But this is being subverted. It's being subverted because people are not sincere, they lack the honesty, they lack the integrity in the formulation or execution of policies.
Yes.
The promises they make, when they have the opportunity, they don't implement it. Rather, they engage in deception, in looting, in...
So it's just commitment to collective responsibility and also collective goals.
That's it.
Well, thank you very much, General. Let me come to the Professor. The strategy against corruption today, as it has developed lots of different kind of dimension. The society is getting more and more complex. Just as you said earlier, you can't operate in the 70s and continue with the same ethos, or so to speak, the same mode of operations to the present, the strategy against corruption. And let's move towards winding up this discussion.
The strategy against corruption has the advantage that it has a leadership that is committed, but it is constrained by the legalistic approach. And that I take the position, which I've repeated in many fora, that this has to be complemented with a social scientific approach. For about 2 years, I've been arguing that we do need the Presidential Truth and Restitution Task Force on Corruption that will depend not only on report, but also on intelligence work that will cover not only today, but yesterday and impact tomorrow, that will complement the whole, that will sort of offset the disadvantages or the deficits of the legal. Take the whistleblower approach. It's an element of out-of-the-box thinking, and it's working. But it will work better if it was structured or within a larger system with more comprehensive overall objectives against corruption, yes, not just money matter. Second point I would like to make before I hand over is that our leaders must do like South Korea, what they did 2-3 decades ago, when the leaders got together, discovered that they were not developing, that corruption was killing the country, and leaders of various colors got together and reached a consensus to kill corruption. Yes. Our leaders have to do that. As of now, we are not doing that. If the same leaders are not making the right laws, or even the laws that are there, they are sabotaging it with legal technicalities. They will tell you, for example, that we're a federal republic, but we are made up of states that comes every month to beg for money. That's one lie. Yes. We should not be deceptive against our population. That's a form of corruption. You say, oh, we are a republic, but we spend 5% of local government money on obas, emirs, and ubis. You say we are a secular state, but you have pilgrim boards, Christian and Muslim, all over the place. This, and even what you say in your national anthem and your constitution about being compatriots. How can I be a compatriot to a man who is putting $49 million inside a room, and I'm 18,000 naira a month, yes, which cannot take, and you say we are compatriots? I mean, these are good examples of saying that the deception between our leaders and the population must stop. It's a form of corruption, and it actually encourages and sustains the, yes, corrupt environment.
Well, thank you very much. You were talking about the social system to get things right.
Yes. Well, what I will say is that we should allow institutions to function and grow. As of law, intelligence gathering, including whistleblowing and other systems, are inbuilt in the social sciences that go behind the enactment of the laws. The laws are not just plucked by arbitrary enactment. If the institutions are allowed to grow, yes, then all our apprehensions may be put to rest. Yes. And all these premature judgments that we pass as individuals or people with group interest or other goals, I think they're often joinedist. Yes. And thank you. I believe that we should allow the goals to manifest in what we do, yes, and in what we have promised to do.
Yes. Thank you very much, General IBM Haruna, for honoring our invitation. Thank you for sharing with us your wealth of experience. And thank you very much, Professor Kwame Odekule.
My pleasure.
So many dimensions we brought to it, actually. Well, in all, I think is the issue of collective responsibility. And just as they said, all institutions should work in accordance with the established rules and regulations and the democratic tenets. That has been Moment for Fact. I am Aliyu Barau. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.